to show that there are at least 8 people in here. And then I think that should be good.
Yeah.
Okay. Can everybody see me? We've all seen it. We're out at a store or in a doctor's office and we see a kid acting up. He's saying how much he hates his mother and to everyone there. And he's pacing. What most people don't realize is this child in question might have Asperger's. These sorts of dramatic meltdowns are just one of the signs people may mistake for an undisciplined child. According to the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, Asperger's is an autism spectrum disorder, one of a specific group of complex neurodevelopment disorders characterized by social impairment, communication difficulties, and restrictive, repetitive, and stereotyped patterns of behavior. People with Asperger's might be known as inappropriate or lacking social graces. But these are things they can't even comprehend. You can't imagine how frustrating it must be, not understanding what your friends seem to take for granted. In my time at Summit Camp, a special needs camp for children with social disorders, I encounter many children suffering from this disorder to varying degrees. They don't know how to communicate when they feel overwhelmed in places like malls or airports. For all their mental differences, though, you wouldn't be able to pick up on an Aspie in a crowd. Nothing about their outward appearance would make you think that they were any different from you or me, which is why most Aspies go undiagnosed until they encounter issues in adolescence or adulthood. Many adults with Asperger's syndrome receive their diagnosis when seeking help for related issues, such as anxiety or depression. Reads autismspeaks.org. Diagnosis tends to center primarily on difficulties with social interactions. Mostly, social interaction is where the differences in Aspie can be seen. As mentioned before, they lack social skills. Some may even have an all-consuming fascination with a topic, such as a movie or a comic book. They may have meltdowns punctuated with hurtful threats towards themselves, their parents, and the world. Some may suffer from sensory issues, such as a sports announcer being too loud or a movie too jumpy for their attention. A child who is suffering from sensory overload is likely to be considered antisocial or aloof, but to them it's just too much to process at one time. In adults, these traits may be less punctuated, but may be present in idiosyncrasies, like preferring a quiet restaurant or avoiding large crowds because you're scared. While it seems daunting, there is help for people with Asperger's. Daily routines can be used to introduce structure. Teaching with visual aids and concise verbal directions can help a child suffering from Asperger's succeed at school or at home. Something many people with Asperger's fail to comprehend is the big picture. For them, it might be helpful to focus on a part of a whole, to allow them to understand how it all comes together. Background noise can be intrusive for someone with Asperger's as they're trying to focus. Eliminating these sounds can help an Aspie avoid sensory overload. I will admit I didn't know much about Asperger's until I worked for Summit. But I soon found myself being able to spot people with Aspie traits out in a crowd. This sort of knowledge can lead to a better understanding when the child behind you in line is too close or having a meltdown of some kind. Learn not to scoff before you observe. While traveling with the camp, we encountered people who just could not wait to comment on our campers' misbehavior. But once they were informed of what kind of camp we were, they looked ashamed. Shame isn't my goal. Spreading understanding and knowledge is. Asperger's is a relatively new disease as far as diagnosis is concerned. It's still being researched to be understood fully. So I hope this speech enlightened you to love someone with Asperger's. Does anybody have any questions?
And you said in the beginning that it's due to the lack of discipline.
No, they can be mistaken for a child who has been not disciplined properly. These kind of meltdowns that they have, they're not tantrums. You can tell the difference between like a 2-year-old having a tantrum and someone who has an autistic disorder like Asperger's. You can tell the difference between that kind of meltdown. And these kids are amazing kids most of the time. Like, you'd be surprised. Some of them are savants, where there's these certain things that they know a ton about. Like I said in the speech, a movie or a comic book. This kid I knew every line to Scarface. Every line. He could tell me about every actor. He could tell me about the director and everything that the director had ever done. I'd never even seen Scarface. Like, it was a very interesting thing, but this is the kind of kid who doesn't pick up on anything, things go over his head, because it's just not there. So, thank you guys for listening.
Good job.